Are you thinking about buying country property in Sonoma County? Well, today's video is for you. I'm going to risk looking dumb in order to share some of the pitfalls and things you need to know about before you purchase your first country property. And I'm going to use my own property as an example. I'm Stephanie Johnson, and I've been a realtor for 20 years. I moved from San Francisco to Sonoma County in 2021, and I haven't looked back, although it's been a bumpy road in some places, and I'm going to share today some of the things I've learned along the way, and I think it will save you some time and some heartache when you buy your first country property. So come along with me. I'm looking forward to sharing with you. So I bought this property almost 5 years ago, and I really fell in love with the gardens because there are a number of trees and beautiful shrubbery, and even though in the fall it's a big mess because all of the trees are dropping their leaves, I still absolutely love it. But I will say the first thing I'm going to warn you about in Sonoma County is trees, because they are lovely, but they are also incredibly high maintenance. They require a tremendous amount of effort, a tremendous amount of resources to maintain, and can sometimes be dangerous. And so I'm going to share a couple of stories with you about the trees on my property. As you can see, there are many. And yeah, it hasn't always been easy. So the type of tree, first of all, that your property has will determine the amount of maintenance and the amount of danger that it poses to your structures and to your life. Monterey pines, in my opinion, and this is backed by many arborists that I've talked to, are probably one of the most dangerous species of trees. And you'll notice, we just walked through my property, but I don't have any more. I took them all down. When I bought this property, there were 5 Monterey pines that were here. One was dead and ready to fall, and I needed to take that down right away. And then over the course of the last few years, I removed the rest of them. I also am going to turn around and show you. So this, beyond this fence, is my neighbor's property, and he had several Monterey pines that all hung over the back edge of this property and were sort of like looming over the back corner of this lot. And so before I closed escrow, I negotiated for the former owner of this property and the neighbor to take them down, and they did that because I was really worried they were all going to fall down, and I had little kids running around and didn't want to worry about it. In addition, there were a couple more trees that actually used to be right here. One was sort of leaning in that direction and the other one leaning in this direction. They both looked super precarious, and after a big storm one day, I came out to check on drainage and everything on my lot and looked up and realized they were gone. And they had fallen, both of them had fallen in opposite directions. One had fallen and threaded my fence, which is new. Thank God it didn't hit it. And the neighbor's property, his house over here. And then the other one had fallen in that direction and missed my pool equipment and the fence to that south side, and did hit some equipment on his property, but actually all the structures were okay, so that was good. But you know, Monterey pines are pretty dangerous, and so I always suggest to people, you know, those are maybe the first trees you want to consider taking down, especially if they're old and big. They grow really fast and they die early, and so heads up about pines. Other trees are just a lot of maintenance. For instance, I have apple trees on my property, and you know, they get loaded with fruit, and if you don't prune them annually, they can get really heavy. And this year, unfortunately, I had a couple of trees. They've been here a long time, and the branches broke when I was on vacation. They got really heavy with apples, and so I had to cut them. So they're odd looking. I'm going to show you. But you can see I'm a bad apple tree owner. You can see that I didn't maintain it. The apples are still kind of falling off, but this whole branch came out here. It was really beautiful, and it fell, and so I had to cut it down. The other thing about trees that I'll say, spent quite a bit of money removing trees, trimming trees, grinding trees, pruning trees. It was not an expected expense. I actually didn't really think about it. I was in the romance of buying a property that had beautiful trees, but even just mowing and blowing all these leaves as they fall down and they end up in the drain and the pool, I mean, it becomes a real headache. So trees are lovely. I actually wouldn't trade them, but you know, lesson learned, they're expensive. So the second pitfall of owning country property is absolutely drainage. And I've had a couple of spectacular things happen on this property since I bought it with regard to water. So when I first moved here to Sebastopol, I was told by somebody that Sebastopol has 2 seasons, dust season and mud season, and that could not be truer. In the winter, there can be a lot of water, and this property actually has a gentle slope. Maybe you can't tell, but from this direction, it slopes down this way. And then of course I decided to put a pool here when I first bought this property. And so the first year the pool was in, We had a huge storm, and I woke up and my pool was full of mud. There was a waterfall coming. You can kind of see I have this sort of messy right now, but I had this waterfall over this wall, and it was full of mud. The whole deck was full of mud, and I thought, uh-oh, the drain is not kind of up to snuff in terms of what the demand is going to be. And so thank God, you know, I hired a very reputable pool contractor, and he came right out. He brought a Caterpillar out here, and he dug a drain right here. It's right back here between these two trees, this tree here that I just walked by and that one. And it's cut right through here all the way to the fence line. And it's, you know, as deep as I am tall, just about, full of drainage rock. And then it's tied into a drainage system that goes around the pool deck and down to the other side. And so that solved it. I haven't had any more problems with the pool, but I did have another problem with the house, and I'm gonna walk over there and show that to you. So I'm on the north side of my house, and actually the north side is the high side of the property, and it has a gentle slope from north to south. And basically you can tell there's a berm here, and basically the water, when it's raining hard, it comes from the front and it comes from this side of the property, and it runs right up against the north side of my house, and underneath this area is my bedroom. And as you can see, a lot of this is new because there was some drainage here, but it was not adequate for the volume of water that was happening during a big storm. And so what I had to do was rip the stairs out. I had to take the stairs out. I had to rip out all of this landscaping. There's landscaping against the house here. Dig a French drain around the front of the house, the back of the house, and out down the slope across the lawn to clear the water away from here as fast as it was accumulating. That was a big project. And I was not expecting to have to do that because the former owner had done some drainage work, and she disclosed that to me when I bought it. And so that was a surprise. But you know, part of the reason drainage is so important, especially in the structure that you live in, is because you don't want water under the house. If water sits under the house and it's in combination with bad ventilation, that is a really great way, my dog's crazy, that is a really great way to get mold in your house. And that's exactly what happened. We didn't have adequate ventilation because some of the vents had been blocked by a former construction project, and we had water accumulating under the house, and we ended up with mold, and it affected our health. So now I say to people when they're looking at property up here, a lot of these homes do not have vapor barriers. They don't have adequate drainage, and you want to take care of that right when you buy a house. I regret not doing it, and I would do it again. And now I tell all my buyers, you know, this house is built in the 70s and the 60s. They're not all, you know, that clean underneath. And Sebastopol and West County in particular have very wet winters. It's really important to do all that work before you move in so your air quality stays healthy. So the next thing that people ask me a lot about country property is water, because out in the country you don't have municipal water, you have this. That's a well. And you know, people say, oh, you have a well, so your water's free. And nothing could be further from the truth. Wells are still expensive. You have to maintain them. This pump died about a year ago, and I had to replace it, and realized that a lot of the wiring was done improperly because the former pump service person did things a little on the janky side. And so I had to run a new conduit and change the pressure tank and do a whole bunch of maintenance on this system. And that was a surprise because it was working fine until one day I had no water. And luckily, shout out to Ray's Pump Company who came out and took care of it for me. But that was a surprise that I share with you because wells actually require a decent amount of maintenance. So a little education about wells. This well was drilled when the property was built, and this house was built in 1972. And it's common that a lot of homes will have the original well. This well is probably about 70 plus feet deep, as I recall, which is on the shallower side. That's common for the era it was built, but nowadays you'll see a well that's more like 200 plus feet deep. You can hire a professional hydrogeologist, which is a fancy word for a well surveyor, to come out to your site if you're building a house, for instance, or drilling a new well, and they can find the best place and the best depth for your site and the particularities of what you have going on there. This is the original well. The casing is fine according to the guys that were just here this year, but the pump needed to be replaced. This pump is what's called a variable speed pump. That just means that as demand in the house is going up or down, that the speed of the pump changes. And it's meant to preserve the longevity of the pump and also save you a little bit of power. Because of course, every time you open a tap, you're paying PG&E to bring the water out of the ground into your home. So there's nothing free about having a well. So if you have a well, then the next thing you're probably thinking about is septic, because they usually go together. Although some properties do have a well and municipal sewer, and some properties have municipal water but a septic tank, but often a country property will have both. In this case, these are the lids that give you access to the tank, and so when I have it serviced, they open those and then we'll pump the tank from here. Water flows into the tank and is treated by some natural bacteria that thrive in an anaerobic environment. And so it breaks down waste and grease and all of the sort of things that end up in the drain. The thing is, with a septic, you have to be thoughtful about what you put down the drain. You can't flush things that aren't human waste. You can't pour bleach or use harsh chemicals in your home, because it will disrupt the delicate balance of bacteria that actually make the septic tank work. And so you have to be careful, and you have to make sure, if you have tenants on the property like I do, that they're careful too. After the water's treated in the tank, it flows from the tank into leach lines, they're called, which are basically lines that are gravity fed, and they flow away from downhill, basically that direction, into what's called a leach field, where then they basically do exactly that. They leach back into the ground and into the water table again. And so it's a really efficient way to deal with waste. It's like a sewer system for one. That said, these do need to be pumped about every 3 to 5 years, depending on how full your house is and how high the volume of sewer usage is. And in addition, the dog. I think she's going to become a YouTube star. Anyway, so as I was saying, the tank itself needs to be pumped. And when I had mine finally pumped, I think I waited a little too long to do it. The guy told me that this has a filter, and that filter needs to be cleaned every year. And it had been several years since I had touched it. So I learned something new when I finally had mine opened up. Yeah, so, they're pretty straightforward, but important to know that you need to get this inspected. And you want to make sure that leach line system is working properly, or you're going to end up with a mess on your hands. So there are just a few more things that I'll mention as sort of things to consider when you're buying country property. And the first is critters. Critters are everywhere. We have gophers, we have foxes, we have skunk, we have squirrels, we have birds of all kinds, rabbits on occasion. I even have seen other things I can't even identify in the night that scare me. but they're part of living in the country. I mean, one time literally this dog, she's digging for gophers right now. Check it out. So anyway, that's funny. So gophers, first of all, so I planted all these trees, and you can see that the dog is literally smelling them and digging for them at the moment. And so all of these trees are in gopher baskets. And you know what? Unfortunately, I had a fig tree right here, and this year it was about to give fruit, and instead the gophers literally ate it at the root, because when I had it planted, the guy that planted it for me, I had my mow and blow guys plant it for me because I was busy, and didn't put it in a gopher basket. And so now I have to start again, which is the frustrating thing about being in the country. I mean, the first year we had a garden, we planted melons, and we had a no dig garden in the ground, and every melon we'd pick up, there was a hole in the bottom. Gopher had chewed through it and eaten the inside out of it. So we ended up putting in, raised beds with wires, gopher wire lines, so that they couldn't do that to us again. So we've learned some tough lessons. The other thing I'll say is that this dog, when she was just a puppy, she came bounding onto the deck when I was here alone with half a dead rabbit in her mouth and dropped it on the deck. I don't know how long it had been dead, but it was the most disgusting smelling thing I'd ever encountered. It took me an hour to just gear up to get the tongs and a trash bag and scoop it up and get it in the trash can. It was so gross. So you have some of that. The other thing we have a lot of here are deer, and they're beautiful. But before I put up this fence behind me, they would come from my neighbor's property right into the garden, eat my roses, eat anything that's living. Actually, they eat it all. They just stare at you while you're banging on a pot trying to get rid of them. I mean, it's pretty amazing how brazen they are, and they will destroy a garden. So of course, in the country, you have to put up fences. And when you have, like me, I have 2 acres, a lot of it was already fenced, but this whole property line along the back here was not. And so this was quite an expensive investment when I got into it to put this fence up, but I'm really glad it's here because of course it's preserving my privacy for my pool, and also, you know, the deer are not using my garden as a smorgasbord. And the last thing I'll say that was really rough that I didn't properly investigate before I bought this property was the internet and what was available here. The only thing that is available here is AT&T DSL. We don't have Comcast. My neighbor to the east here has Comcast, and my neighbors to the west across our lane have Comcast. But when I asked Comcast to bring it here, they said no, it was too expensive. So we do not have cable. We do not have fiber. AT&T does not have fiber out here. I'm in southern Sebastopol. And so the only option is AT&T DSL, Dish Network, or Starlink. And I finally got tired of the DSL speeds, and so I invested in the Starlink. But let me tell you, this is the only place, because of all those trees I mentioned in the beginning of this video, this is the only place that I can put that damn thing, get a signal that's consistent, because the trees actually interfere with the satellite connection. So as you can see, it's pretty far from my house. I had already dug a conduit from this barn / future pool house. That barn contains all of the equipment for the internet. The signal's coming from the antenna here that's attached to my back fence. And then I have right now a cable on the ground, which is awaiting my gardeners to come back and put in a conduit. And then I ran another conduit from the barn into my house so I would have a solid connection. And then I need to have a connection beamed over a sort of a 2-point connection exterior that would beam that signal over to my ADU. So that was a complex project that I was not expecting to have. I mean, you'd think internet, you know, it's 2025, internet should be available everywhere. Not necessarily. So, you know, learn from my mistakes and check your options thoroughly before you close escrow. As you can see, owning country property has its pitfalls and its sort of surprise expenses, but ultimately I'm thrilled that I bought a property with acreage in the country. I actually love it. I love problem solving, and I love enjoying the sort of nature here that I didn't have when I lived in San Francisco. I have, you know, multiple kinds of fruits growing on this property. I always raise a huge garden. We have a nice summer experience here with the pool. I mean, it's special to live in the country, and I have a deep appreciation for it. But I hope that this video gave you a little bit of reality so that when you dive in, you know, you're not surprised. And certainly now that I've done it and helped many people do the same, I have a lot more experience that I can help you make all kinds of good decisions so that when you get into your new country property, you're feeling really excited. So I'm Stephanie Johnson. I hope this has been helpful. Let me know in the comments if you have other questions about any of these things, and certainly hit that subscribe button. Make sure you watch our videos because we'll be dropping them every week, and we'll give you lots of education about buying property all over Sonoma County. And until then, take care. When you hire people to cut down the trees and make all the wood chips, don't mistake them for wood workers, because they're not. I actually asked them, I said, hey, I sent them a photo of a very simple bench. It looked nothing like this. This is actually a bench. I think, you know, I don't know if you figured that out when you were watching the video. I sent them a very simple image of a bench that was not this at all. And I asked them to use some of the stumps and the extra pieces of wood to create this bench so I could put it in the garden. And this is what they left me. So noted, another mistake. I leave it here for entertainment value now. Anyway. Did you get one? Oh, your ball is in there. Oh, what's that? Get your ball. Look at your face. You dig it? Did you get one? No, you're just trying to get the gopher to play ball with you? Okay.